Another characteristic that the propagandists point to are tiny craters supposedly caused by micrometeorites, otherwise known as zap pits. On page 175 of the Desert Publications edition of his book, Bill Kaysing discussed a method that NASA could have used to fake the tiny craters. There is a laboratory in Santa Barbara that specializes in extremely high-speed impact studies. They've achieved velocities of 32,000 feet per second with a two-stage projectile system. Obviously, rock specimens could be exposed to high-speed particles, thus simulating small particle meteorite bombardment.
Here, Kaysing offers up one of his famous "I know a guy who knows a guy" stories. It's no more than a bare assertion fallacy. Kaysing says that some unidentified company in Santa Barbara had equipment back in the 60s that was capable of emulating micrometeoroid impacts, and thus produced the zap pits found in NASA's fake moon rocks. So why didn't Kaysing give us the name of the company? Was it a secret? No. Was he protecting a source? No. He just didn't want to make it easy for anybody to check the facts. It's not impossible to figure out who the company was by looking at the clues Kaysing left us. Kaysing said this laboratory used a two-stage projectile system capable of 32,000 feet per second. Okay, he's obviously talking about a two-stage light gas gun. Two-stage describing the design, light gas describing the gas in the pump tube, usually hydrogen or helium. I'm not going to waste valuable class time describing how this gun works. But if you've ever played with a pellet gun, you already understand the concept thoroughly. The salient point here is that the projectile has to fit snugly into the barrel if they want to maintain control of it and hit their target. Now, there were about a dozen of these guns in labs across the United States in the 60s. One was in Santa Barbara, at the General Motors Defense Research Laboratories. Long story short, they were hurling 1 1/4-inch metallic discs, either aluminum or copper or tungsten, at targets, sheets of steel and other metals, and measuring the shockwave characteristics to calculate the Shocks-Huguenois equations of state. In other words, they were probably trying to figure out if they could induce enough shock or vibration to detonate a Soviet ICBM re-entering the Earth's atmosphere by throwing a fast-moving cloud of custom-designed shrapnel at it. That's my educated guess as to what their defense contract was about. They had more things to worry about back in the 60s than manufacturing moon rocks. The limiting factor in using this gun is that the barrel was designed for 1 1/4-inch projectiles weighing 100 to 200 grams. If they tried to fire a microgram-sized shot with this gun, they would have difficulty controlling it. They'd have no directionality. If more than one high-velocity shot hit a silicate rock simultaneously, the multiple stress points would probably fracture the rock. In fact, if they used too much shot, they would pulverize their targets. And if they used too little shot, it would get hung up in the sabot or get lost in the barrel. But most importantly, this gun fell short of the 32,000 feet per second bogey that Kaysing claimed it had. So maybe he didn't even know about this gun after all, and just made the whole thing up. That's possible. Then, from a more practical standpoint, how would anyone back in the 60s know what a micrometeoroid impact looked like? How would they know how to simulate it correctly? What data would they have used to verify that their projectiles were the right shape, size, weight, material, and traveling at the correct speed? NASA performed their first micrometeoroid impact studies in 1966 and 1967 by sending detectors to the Moon on 5 lunar orbiter missions. The data NASA collected from that experiment was used to calculate a risk assessment and determine how much protection was necessary for the Apollo astronauts and their spacecraft. Artificial micrometeoroid impact studies were not even dreamed of until the long-term missions came around, the Shuttle, Skylab, and the International Space Station.
If NASA were concerned about distinguished traces of projectiles being found in the fake moon rocks, why wouldn't they just use projectiles made from the same metallic elements found in the samples, such as aluminium, which, as a matter of fact, is exactly what NASA does today to simulate micrometeoroid impacts on the International Space Station.
Aluminum pellets? First off, Actual micrometeoroids bear no mineralogical or chemical similarity to the aluminum alloy pellets used during today's micrometeoroid simulations. Like their big brothers, the meteorites, micrometeoroids are made of rock, mostly iron and a few oxides. ESA mainly farms out this type of testing today for the International Space Station. They're testing the long-term reliability of the exterior of the spacecraft and the effect on spacecraft functionality by shooting the hull with aluminum alloy pellets. And although there is aluminum in some moon rocks, it's in the form of aluminum oxide and fine metallic grains. You definitely wouldn't expect to find aluminum clumped around all the zap pits. And the aluminum pellets used to do micrometeoroid impact studies on Earth would be made of an aluminum alloy, and they would leave an obvious trace of metallics at the surface during impact and down through the tiny boreholes. It might be suspicious to a lab tech who cross-sections one of NASA's moon rocks, and by performing a basic spectrographic analysis, identifies a common aluminum alloy on the inside of a moon rock, an alloy that is knowingly manufactured on Earth. That wouldn't fool a geologist's grandmother.
I have never claimed everything Bill Kaysing said was accurate. As wishful as it is, there will never be any material from either side of the fence that will be without error. My attitude is not simply because Kaysing said it. My stance is, Bill said it, and I have verified it.
Really? So how did Jarrah verify this particular claim? Did he give us the name of the company that supposedly did the micrometeoroid impact studies in the 60s? No. Did he demonstrate a tiny ring of aluminum alloy exists around even one zap pit? No. Instead, just as he always does, Jarrah blindly accepts and repeats Grandpa Kaysing's nonsense without question. So far, none of Kaysing's claims, which were subsequently verified by Jarrah and used in any of his videos that I've seen, has passed even the most casual inspection. Kaysing's conspiracist Bible appears to be nothing but total speculation and innuendo, and Jarrah is doing almost as well with his groundless moon rock claims. Ciao, moon hoax conspirators, wherever you are.